finally hit 10 p.m. and it was time for me to go to sleep. But sleep never came. Instead, I kept tossing and turning in my bed. I could swear that I still felt someone watching me. After a couple of hours passed, I had begun to drift off when out of the nowhere I heard what sounded like scratching on the glass. I immediately turned to my window, where I could swear I saw the edge of someone's shirt as they tucked themselves behind the wall. Before I could react, I heard my mom yelling for me. I leapt across my room and ran through my door, slamming closed as I passed. When I made it to my mom's room, she told me to close the door. After I did, with no questions asked, she said someone is outside of the house. My heart began to race. The police are on the way, just stay in here. My mom pulled out her phone and opened up the security camera. The man wasn't there anymore, but at a closer look, we could now see that my bedroom window has been opened. It wasn't long before the police arrived, though it felt like hours. By the time they got to my house, whoever it was had left. As I began to tell the police officers about the man I had seen at school earlier that day, he said that he and his partner would search the woods to see what they find. When they returned, I was horrified to find out they had found what they said was a homeless person's campsite. They said they also found a small journal with drawings of my classroom window, and at the last page, he had written, "It's time." To this day, no one knows who that man was or where he went. All I know is our dog has been sleeping in my room ever since.
I'm not coming down with you, Casey's has thin crust.
Thin crust? Thin crust. He's finally coming down.
The wait is over. Casey's new light and crispy thin crust is here.
CarHop has great used cars with low down payments, even if you have bad credit. We specialize in saying yes when bank.
This story happened my senior year of high school, which was about 5 years ago now. That year, they added this new room at the back part of the school. I can't remember the exact name they used for the room, but it was basically just an area with several computers and tables, and it was used for giving students extra help with school and making up tests and things like that. It had been made out of an old abandoned classroom that wasn't used for several years. At this time, I had been out of school for 2 days with an ear infection, and in that time, I missed a math test. When I returned to the math teacher, he allowed me to make up the test during study hall, so I went to that new room to take it. The teacher, Mr. Marcus, didn't want to have to go to the room and watch me take the test, so he let me go by myself and said he trusted me not to cheat. I walked all the way over to the room, which was pretty much on the complete opposite end of the school. Once I got to the room, I sat down and began the test. It wasn't too long of a test, but it was a really important one. Right when I got to the third question, the telephone in the room started ringing. I didn't want to get up and answer it, but I figured it was probably Mr. Marcus. I walked over and picked it up. When I did, I was told we were under a lockdown and there was a suspicious person in the building. I was scared being all by myself back in this room with nobody else there. And there wasn't even a classroom next to me I could go to, because this classroom was between two locker rooms for the gym, which was also nearby. I did what I was instructed to do and shut the door. As I did, I decided to take a quick look out into the hallway. It was completely empty and quiet as well. I went back in and decided to turn off the lights. I went out of sight of the door and went towards the back. Then I took out my phone and used the screen to give me some light to try to do more questions of the test. However, I couldn't really focus with us being in a lockdown. Suddenly, I heard the door to the room that I was in open. It was at that moment that I remembered I hadn't locked the door. Quickly, I ducked down underneath the table that I was at. I could see just barely from under the table a small amount of light coming in from the doorway and saw boots on the ground. At least they appeared to be boots, as I couldn't really see much. I was terrified, and I held my breath so that I wouldn't make a sound. Whoever was in there stood in the doorway for a while, and then the door shut. I barely heard footsteps walking into the room. I was literally shaking, trying not to make a sound. The room then went completely silent and remained that way. I slowly breathed in and out as quietly as I could. was expecting at any moment to feel someone grab me from behind or something like that. But then, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a computer falling off the desk to the ground. Then I heard the noise of a man yelling and screaming. It seemed as though whoever was in this room had gone into a rage and was screaming and smashing things. I opened my eyes and looked over. I still couldn't really see anything, but I could hear where all the noise was coming from, and it was at the opposite end of the classroom to my left. I was terrified and knew I needed to get out of there. The exit was directly in front of me and to the right, and the noises were directly in front of me to the left, so I figured I had to make a run for it. I took a deep breath, and then got out from under the desk and ran as fast as I could, as whoever was
What the hell? Why do you run like that?
I ran forward to the door and was just barely able to see where I was going. I stumbled into a chair just before the door, but I was still able to make it out. I heard the man yelling as I left the room and sprinted down the hallway. I ran all the way to the front of the
Mama?
where I saw
I'll do your walk.
Shh.
I yelled where the guy was
Mama.
destroying things.
Then
Another
don't
officer
push
came out of
me.
the school. After some time, I was able to calm down and we ended up catching the man. I got to go home right after. I feel so lucky that I made it out of that room, because obviously
I'm gonna have
that
the chocolate
was
one.
very dangerous.
Oh, why did my first go 8.8 beats per minute? Why my heart go 8.8 beats per minute?
During the first semester,
88 beats per second.
last class of the day. The school that I went to was pretty average size, I would
They
say.
were not stupid.
It's not minutes, it's seconds.